The war, the weather, your parents, your partner. There's so many outside influences preventing you from living the life of your dreams, right? Wrong. If you think there are, then you're playing the victim. And I, as a professional victim in recovery, would love to help you overcome what is the most limiting perspective a person can take. In 27 years of working with plant medicine, I've seen two perspectives that predicted the outcomes of every single individual that I've worked with. That is, whether or not they took radical responsibility for their state of being or whether they blamed it on some outside circumstance. It didn't matter if it was a relationship, it didn't matter if it was a business, it didn't matter if it was health, mental illness, whatever it was. If someone took full responsibility for their state of being, then you could guarantee that they would experience recovery. That doesn't mean that they were going to all of a sudden be catapulted into their material manifestation of their dream life. But they came to understand that circumstances do not matter, that state of being is what matters and predicts who we become. I said I was a professional victim in recovery, and I mean it. I could even turn that into a victim statement, but I won't. I chose at a certain point in my life to accept the storyline that had been given to me, and it became my reality for a very long time. Eventually, fortunately, through plant medicines and loving relationships and my own determination and desire to live the best that I can in this world that is indeed very troubled, I came to the realization that I had been playing the victim nearly my entire life. Now, this is not this is not victim blaming, as in you are responsible for being born into an abusive family. There are certainly things that happen in this world that are absolutely beyond our control, are horrible. All you've got to do is take a look at the news headlines and you'll see that there are things that are happening that people cannot control in mass throughout this world. But what you will see if you look through history, and even if you look into lives of people that you know today or people who are highly successful, that the difference is those people, no matter what their circumstances were, decided that they were going to be responsible for their state of being, that they were not going to let the outside world dictate who they were. It's a tricky state to be in, though, because it can sneak up on us at any time, especially if we don't do real deep work to heal this. I've seen this in the individuals that I've worked with, and there are two different cases that come to mind. One being a person who had, for all intents and purposes, he had overcome the potentials for victimhood. He was a Czechoslovakian born. He made his way to the States in the 80s. He bootstrapped himself up from extreme poverty and built a multi-million dollar microchip manufacturing business. It was highly successful. It was amazing work. And he nearly lost it all because he fell victim or to the guilt and pressure of his children. Now, it wasn't really his children, it was his past that was coming back to haunt him because even though he had picked himself up by his bootstraps, made his way in the States, and become this highly successful person, there was still a little boy inside of him that was deeply ashamed for his upbringing. When he achieved financial success, he swore that his children would never experience the life that he did. So he did what any father would do. Not really, but he gave them each a $20,000 per month salary when they hit 18 years old and all of their bills covered, their car insurance, their cars purchased for them, their schooling, their housing, everything. And every time he felt the pressure of this draining financial situation and tried to bring it up with them, they pushed back, understandably, because there had been a long history that had led up to things being the way they were. And whenever they pushed back, he felt that shame and guilt of his childhood and backed away. He couldn't do the thing that he knew he needed to do to ensure his own personal security over the long term because he felt like he was victim to his children. And I watched this all from the outside over the course of several years. And my heart went out to him, but there was nothing that I could say. There was no way that I could help him see because every time the conversation arose, he immediately went into victim mentality. There's another place that it shows up in highly successful people, and this is the nobody understands my burden. Nobody understands the load that I carry. I have certainly exhibited this individual who I'm speaking of. He spoke to this quite frequently. And so it's just to say that no matter what level of success we reach in our lives, if we don't heal these wounds that underlie our state, then we are going to be subject to them at some point. And they can absolutely turn our life around. But that's not us being victim to these wounds. It's us being victim to our own perspective, to our own unwillingness to engage with a very challenging reality and overcome it, to take radical responsibility for our state of being and shift it. One such instance that comes to mind is a woman who had experienced some severe sexual trauma ongoing. And I bring this up not only because she was an incredible example of resiliency and ownership for her state of being, but because this circumstance is for men or women is one that is often cited as a valid reason for continuing to live and express trauma responses. This person, she had become a successful nurse working in a large hospital. She was running an entire floor of nurses. She had an incredibly intelligent and successful son that she had raised, a very happy marriage. But she did not play the victim to these experiences in her childhood that could have very well led her to do. Instead, she ran right into them and faced them and asked the question of what can she do to change her state of being so that she is no longer a victim to the past. It's wild to think that our lives for years and years into the future can be so adversely affected by a single event. That's not to say that these things that happen aren't traumatic or challenging or don't deserve our attention. But when we make excuses for the way that we are, when we blame our current state of being on our past, then it's continued victimhood. And there is nothing that will confine you to your state of misery and suffering like perpetuating this belief that you are somehow a victim of your circumstances. So it's easy to say that radical responsibility, you just take ownership for where you're at and move on from there. But is it so easy to do? It's how does this happen for someone? How does someone shift their perspective to understand that not only are they not a victim to their circumstances and things that happened to them in the past, but that these things that happened to them in the past can actually help them become who they are meant to be. It takes a ton of work, is what it takes us reaching out to others who can support us, others who can encourage us. It takes us taking little baby steps in our perspective and achieving support. And I would argue that it takes faith. It takes a experiential understanding of a force, a power, a strength that is much bigger than us, that is far beyond us. It is so easy to get bogged down into our myopic perspective, thinking that whatever we're experiencing right now is all that there is and all that there ever will be. But with an expanded perspective, with an expanded state, you can begin to see that not only are things just like they're supposed to be, but they're actually working for us. Now, this takes a long view. And for many people, this actually takes the perspective on lifetimes. To think that all the problems will be solved in this one single experience is exceedingly naive. And I think similarly, to believe that this life is all that there is another naive perspective. I've been a student of Rudolf Steiner for, a year and a half or two now, And Rudolf Steiner, if you don't know, he was a 19th century mystic, also a scientist who had a very pragmatic view on the spiritual world. And currently, I'm reading a book of him, but that was influenced by him, that is a woman recounting her experience in talking with angels. Now, whatever you believe of this subject, that's up to you. I do have the experience of intelligence beyond the physical realm that does communicate and support us, and I am grateful for that. And she said something in this book that hit me exceedingly powerfully, especially in context of this conversation and reflection. And that was the angels told her that the greatest freedom that humans have is the the freedom of resolve. That is that's a statement that I have never considered, heard, given any time to until this reading. And as I sat with this reading, and what it was saying is that anytime we resolve ourselves to a state of being, to a life that we dream of, and just really just let's not get bogged down in thinking of this in terms of material accomplishments when we say the life of our dreams, because all of the things that we're seeking to achieve ultimately are going towards one goal, and that is our happiness, right? So once we make a resolution to live in a certain state of being, then that becomes the freedom to give ourselves over to these influences that can support us. I'm particularly drawn back to the individual who was subject to the sexual abuse in her childhood, because in her experience, it was a powerful, painful experience where she was suffocated by her abuser and then resuscitated by the same abuser. And this period of time where she was unconscious, and let's just say on the other side, she had an awareness of experience that she wanted to touch back with and to gain clarity on what had happened to her then. So that's why she actually came to work with me, and we went through this experience together. It was one of the most challenging and painful sessions of support that I've ever been through, and I went into it of my own volition. There was no victimhood here. I was very grateful to share this challenging, painful memory with her. And in this memory, she encountered what she understood as angels who told her she had to go back, that there was still work to be done. And it was a very difficult realization. And there was a part of her, even in that childhood state, that felt a sense of victimhood. But somehow, a seed within her that was perhaps planted by these intelligences, by these angelic beings, helped her see that no, this was not something that was happening to you, and in time she would understand. And in time, she did develop that resolve to live a healthy, happy life. And it certainly seems that forces far beyond her control came in to assist with that. So that's what I would like for to welcome all of us into, is this idea of the freedom of resolve, being resolved to no longer be a victim to your circumstances. Be resolved to be fully responsible for your state of being, because your state of being is the only thing that really matters. Viktor Frankl's amazing book that documents his time in the concentration camps illustrates very clearly that no matter what your circumstances are, you can step into a state of being that rises above even the most horrific of crimes and experiences. And this is actually where miracles come from. This is how miracles are born, is by understanding that whatever is happening, I am not victim to it. I am not the effect of this cause. Rather, I am the cause that brings about an effect. That is empowerment. That is shedding off the victimhood mentality. That is the freedom of resolution. And I invite you to explore this. It will take time, and it will be counterintuitive. There will be many opportunities for you to find strong disagreement with this. I understand that. Myself have worked many years and still continue to work towards fully integrating this, knowing I have witnessed through others and experience in my own life. And so I just want to be here to encourage you to do the same. I thank you so much for spending this time with me. If you found this video in any way helpful, please subscribe, share, comment, do all those things that help improve the algorithm. But hey, I'm not a victim to whether you engage or not. I'm going to show up. I'm going to do this thing no matter how cringy and challenging it is at times, because I know that my state of being is what predicts the outcome and the success for this channel. So, what is your state of being leading you to?